America's urban collapse isn't coming, it's already here. And the cities you're about to see? They're at ground zero. From skyrocketing rents to out-of-control crime, broken infrastructure to mass exodus, these U.S. cities have become unsustainable for families, retirees, and working-class Americans alike. You won't believe which once thriving metropolis has turned into a danger zone, and you might just be living in one. So ask yourself this: what happens when the economy buckles, crime surges, and housing becomes a luxury only the elite can afford? These aren't hypotheticals, they're happening right now. And if you don't act fast, you might find yourself stuck in a place that no longer feels like home. Here are 10 US cities you must leave before 2025, before it's too late. Number 5. Detroit, Michigan. Their story is no longer just one of decline, it's a cautionary tale. Once the engine of America's auto industry, the city has hemorrhaged over 60% of its population since the 1950s, with recent years showing no sign of recovery. Between 2020 and 2023 alone, Detroit shrank by another 1 to 2% annually. And it's not just about people leaving, it's about who's staying. Many of those left behind are elderly, low income, or dependent on failing public services. The middle class? They're gone. Unemployment remains staggeringly high, between 12% and 15%, making Detroit one of the worst performing labor markets in the US. Add to that a poverty rate exceeding 30%, and you're looking at a city trapped in a decades-long economic chokehold. Even major revitalization projects have failed to lift entire neighborhoods out of decay. Schools are underfunded, roads are crumbling, and public transportation? Often unreliable or non-existent. Despite brief media hype over tech startups or creative zones popping up in Midtown or downtown, the reality for most Detroiters is bleak. Blight and abandonment plague thousands of properties. The city is dotted with over 30 vacant homes, many of which are fire-prone or used for illegal activity. Safety is a real concern. Even if crime has technically dropped on paper, many neighborhoods remain under-policed and heavily armed. Detroit has become a symbol of the American dream gone wrong. For those who still live there, the writing is on the wall. And for anyone considering moving to Detroit in 2025, you might want to ask, what are you really signing up for? Number 4. Baltimore, Maryland. Once a proud port city with a rich industrial legacy, it's now a hotspot for violence, corruption, and economic dysfunction. Since 2020, violent crime in some districts has surged by over 20%, making Baltimore one of the most dangerous cities in America per capita. Carjackings, assaults, and homicides are no longer outliers, they're part of daily life. The population is shrinking, and fast. More than 3 to 5% of Baltimore's residents have left in recent years, with many citing public safety and crumbling city services as the tipping point. Entire blocks of row homes sit vacant, riddled with boarded windows and spray paint. Once vibrant neighborhoods like Sandtown, Winchester, and Park Heights now resemble war zones. And the exodus is being fueled not just by fear, but by a failing economy. Baltimore's job market has stalled, especially for blue-collar and working-class residents. Infrastructure is in disrepair, with hundreds of water main breaks annually and some school buildings still lacking proper air conditioning. Even basic sanitation has become unreliable, and while the city has invested in controversial surveillance programs and tech policing, many residents feel less safe than ever. So why are people still staying? For many, it's because they can't leave. Families with generational ties, elderly homeowners, and low-income renters have few options. But for those with mobility, this might be your final warning. Baltimore isn't just declining, it's disintegrating. Number 3. St. Louis, Missouri. They might not dominate national headlines like Los Angeles, New York, but its problems run just as deep and just as dangerous. With a population decline of nearly 15% over the past decade, the city is literally vanishing. And the numbers don't lie. Violent crime rates are now among the highest in the entire United States, with nearly 2,000 incidents per 100,000 residents. What's fueling the exodus? A toxic combination of entrenched poverty, decaying infrastructure, and a public school system on life support. The job market is stagnant, the racial wealth divide is massive, and police-community relations are at a breaking point. Some neighborhoods in North St. Louis report unemployment levels above 20%, and public trust in governance has evaporated after years of scandal and mismanagement. Downtown revitalization efforts have been cosmetic at best. A few new condos and stadium projects can't distract from the hollowed-out neighborhoods and drug-ravaged corridors just blocks away. Residents describe a growing sense of abandonment not just by City Hall, but by the American system itself. And here's the kicker. Many in the Midwest see St. Louis as a warning for what happens when cities ignore decades of racial inequality, economic decline, and disinvestment. Is it any wonder why families, professionals, and even longtime locals are packing up for good? St. Louis isn't just fading, it's falling. Number 2. Cleveland, Ohio. Year after year, the city loses about 1% of its population, and that trend continues heading into 2025. Entire blocks sit empty, and major employers have left. Now, with over 30% of residents living below the poverty line and a median household income far below the national average, Cleveland is no longer a city on the rise, it's a city on the ropes. The city's downtown core has tried to reinvent itself with flashy stadiums, casinos, and event centers, but that hasn't stopped the bleeding. The jobs created are mostly low-wage and unstable. Meanwhile, outer neighborhoods remain plagued by blight, crime, and low property values. For homeowners, it's a nightmare trapped in homes they can't sell in markets that won't rebound. Education is another area in crisis. Cleveland's public schools consistently rank among the worst performing in Ohio, and the graduation rate is hovering dangerously close to 70%. For families hoping to build a future, that's a huge red flag. And public transit is unreliable, with major budget cuts crippling mobility across the metro area. Many who leave Cleveland describe it as a slow death, not a catastrophe, but a steady grind of worsening conditions and fewer opportunities. And as more residents leave, tax revenues drop, public services shrink, and the spiral accelerates. Could this be the beginning of a Rust Belt extinction? Or is Cleveland already too far gone? Number 1, New Orleans, Louisiana. The Big Easy is no longer just charming, it's crumbling. The city faces a 30% increase in flood-related incidents since 2010, according to NOAA. Sea levels are rising. Storms are intensifying, and infrastructure can't keep up. For many residents, every hurricane season is now a gamble. Will this be the storm that ends it all? But environmental threats are just the beginning. Homeowner insurance premiums have spiked by 40% over the past decade, driving many middle-class families out. Housing costs, combined with skyrocketing utility bills, make New Orleans one of the most expensive and risky places to live in the Gulf region. And that doesn't include FEMA complications, constant boil water advisories, and evacuation chaos. The economy, once bolstered by tourism, music, and food, is under siege. COVID crushed the hospitality sector, and recovery has been uneven. Add to that rising crime, especially in neighborhoods outside the French Quarter, and you've got a city that's beautiful to visit but dangerous to call home. Even locals now admit that New Orleans is on borrowed time. So here's the question. Is staying worth the risk? Is culture enough to outweigh catastrophe? For many, the answer has already been made. Tens of thousands are fleeing New Orleans, and if you're still there in 2025, you might be rolling the dice one too many times. Across these 10 cities, a brutal pattern has emerged: rising costs, shrinking populations, surging crime, and collapsing infrastructure. From California's unaffordable coasts to the rusting cores of the Midwest, Americans are waking up to a new reality. Some cities are no longer livable. What was once a temporary squeeze is now a full-blown evacuation. And it's not just economic, it's emotional. Families are abandoning roots. Generations are breaking ties. People who spent decades building lives in places like Detroit, New York, or New Orleans are now fleeing not out of choice, but out of necessity. The big question now is, which city will be next? Will your hometown survive the storm, or are you unknowingly sitting in a ticking time bomb? Leave a comment below. Are you planning to leave your city before 2025? And which cities do you think are on the brink of collapse? Subscribe for more bold, data-driven geopolitical and travel breakdowns, and don't forget to hit the bell. Because in today's America, knowing where to live might just be the most important decision of your life.